I've been engaged to my fiancé, Matt, for 16 months now. I'm also 7 months pregnant and have a 4-year-old child from a previous marriage. We had plans to marry 5 months ago, but his grandpa passed away, and in order to observe the mourning period, we postponed our wedding. Now, I am making this post precisely because I read another story here about how a husband tried to financially screw his wife over by getting his dad's name on property and then transferring it to him so that the property isn't connected at all to the marriage, and by extension, the wife. I'm also a stay-at-home parent to my 4-year-old and been nesting for our baby on the way. My fiancé has been in the family business with his dad for many years now, and we rent right now. I already knew of my fiancé's plans for our first home together, which is currently in the process. He has put down deposits for our home in his dad's name, which will be transferred to him shortly. He said that this was for tax purposes, and I never bothered doing any research on this, but now I can see this is to ensure that he doesn't lose the house in case we separate. We have a prenup, and I talked to him about this, and I agree that this is his asset from money saved over the years, and now I can't help but wonder if I should have known better. I don't have a good feeling about this, especially since we've been having talks about reviewing our prenup. He says he is doing this to ensure the prenup doesn't get overturned, and that he needs this to feel secure in our relationship. Before meeting him, I was living off child support, still am, and private tutoring kids, but after getting pregnant, I wanted to focus on family and stopped working. I mean, I can pick up tutoring anytime. I am licensed, but the fact that I cannot have any claim on our marital home seems wrong. How should I proceed? Edit. He is majorly financing the house through his savings plus sale of $200,000 shares. It also includes some of my own savings accumulated over the years, tilde 10% of the whole initial deposit value. Edit 2. I know my contribution is small, but I still came forward and offered to finance some part of our new home. And he took it, and now I feel foolish. I don't know, I just feel upset that my fiancé knew this will screw me over. His lawyer probably told him to do that without consulting me, so that I don't stop him, and now it's too late. Plus, as a homemaker, I do most of the housework, and in the event we separate, I'd like to be compensated for that. I just can't believe he did that. I'm floored right now. I just feel like I knew just enough, so that I don't accuse him of non-disclosure, and he can openly claim that I didn't do my research with my own lawyer. I've been extremely busy with pregnancy and managing my 4-year-old's ADHD, so he knew I wouldn't have time to do my due diligence. I trusted him to keep me safe. I feel like he took advantage of how bad it's been for me. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Go back to work as soon as possible. Do not further trap yourself by not having some form of real income for yourself and children. Do not marry him until you have altered the prenuptial agreement to offer you spousal support payouts. If you remain as a stay-at-home mom for the duration of the marriage that is above the value you have contributed to the home that is being transferred out from underneath you. Comment 2. You need to get your own lawyer to look over the prenup. Either the money you are contributing to the house gets you on the deed, or you don't put in any money. Protect yourself. Now for the update. Thanks for sticking around for this update. So, where do I even start? The past month has been pretty tough, and not the fun kind. Remember how I mentioned my fiancé Matt was putting our future home in his dad's name? Well, things escalated and not in my favor. Just when I thought we could maybe work things out, Matt's ex-girlfriend showed up out of nowhere. Apparently, she's been in the picture the whole time, and I was too blind to see it. She's been helping him with the family business, and guess what? She's not just an employee. She's a shareholder, a big one. And the shares Matt sold to finance our house, they went to her. So now she's got a hold on him financially and emotionally. I felt like a fool, used and walked all over. I confronted Matt, and he had the nerve to tell me it was all business, nothing personal. But how could it not be personal? We're supposed to be getting married, for crying out loud. And there's more. She's pregnant. Yep, you read that right. Matt's going to be a father again, and it's not with me. I was devastated, but I had to keep it together for my kid and the baby on the way. I decided to take action. I called up my old contacts and started tutoring again. I wasn't going to sit around and be the victim I needed to secure my own future and that of my children. But then, Matt's dad had a heart attack. The family business was in chaos, and Matt was too busy dealing with his dad's health and the company to even pretend to care about our situation. I was left to handle everything on my own, and it was overwhelming. In the midst of all this, I found out that the house Matt was buying, it wasn't just in his dad's name, it was in his ex's name, too. They planned it together. I was furious. I felt betrayed not just by Matt, but by his entire family. They knew about the affair and said nothing. I had to do something bold. I went to Matt's lawyer and demanded transparency. I showed him the proof of my financial contribution to the house and made it clear I wasn't going to be pushed aside. The lawyer was taken aback, but he had to admit I had a point. He agreed to renegotiate the terms of the prenup to include my stake in the property. Matt was livid when he found out. He accused me of going behind his back, but I stood my ground. I was done being the doormat. We had a huge fight and it was ugly. Accusations were thrown and things were said that couldn't be taken back. In the end, Matt stormed out and I was left alone, wondering if our relationship could ever be repaired. The aftermath was messy. Matt's dad recovered, but the business suffered. Matt's ex was pushing for more control, and with the baby on the way, she had leverage. I was caught in the middle, trying to protect my interests and those of my children. Then, as if things couldn't get any worse, Matt's ex had a miscarriage. It was a tragedy, and it shook everyone. Matt was a wreck, and for a moment, I felt sorry for him. But then I remembered all the lies and the betrayal, and my sympathy vanished. In the end, Matt came to me, asking for forgiveness. He said he realized he had made a mistake and wanted to make things right. I didn't know what to believe anymore. Could I trust him again? Could we move past all the hurt and build a future together? I told him I needed time to think. I had to consider what was best for me and my kids. I wasn't going to rush into a decision. I had learned my lesson the hard way. So here we are, a month later, and things are still up in the air. I'm working, taking care of my kids, and trying to figure out what the future holds. It's not the happy ending I hoped for, but at least I'm taking control of my life. And for now, that's enough. Thanks for reading. Aita for agreeing to take care of my boyfriend's apartment and car. While he's overseas, only to find out he's been using me all along. I'm a 25-year-old having this issue with my boyfriend, who is 30 years old, whom I've been dating for a year. Overall, we've had a pretty good relationship, and I'm happy. When we started dating, I discovered he was very frugal, which was great because, so am I. However, as the year has gone by, I've started noticing that his concept of frugal is very different from mine. And it's reached a point where it's putting a strain on my finances since I'm kind of supporting both of us. Here are a few examples. Unless I suggest otherwise and plan dates, we never go out. If we do go out, he'll only go if I pay for whatever activity I've planned. He's good with not going out on dates and just staying home, which I like, but it gets boring after a while. He doesn't do grocery shopping and doesn't like cooking. He only gets takeout, or once in a while he gets a meal delivery service. A lot of times when I go over to his place and I get hungry, I'm either stuck eating junk food snacks, I prefer to starve than eat processed trash, or I have to go grocery shopping and pay for it out of my own pocket, and then cook for both of us. He eats a lot, and whenever he comes to my place, he likes me to cook extra so he can have leftovers to take home. I'm okay with this. However, my grocery bill is going up, and I'm having to cut corners in other areas of my life. For example, I've stopped driving to work, and now I walk 1 hour both ways to save on gas to offset the extra grocery costs. I'm going on a trip next week. I asked him if he'd like to come too, and he agreed after I sent him a spreadsheet with all the costs, flight expenses, etc. And he agreed to it. I bought the plane tickets and booked the hotel a few weeks ago, and he doesn't seem to have any intention to pay his share of the expenses. Like, it's okay, it's taking a dent on my savings, but I can afford this without going into debt. I'd just appreciate it a lot if he'd told me beforehand he was up for going on the trip only if I paid for it. For reference, it's not like my boyfriend is a broke student or trying to save money because of debt. He makes more than $200,000, has no debt, no weird addictions, and his net worth is well over $1 million. I have no interest in him paying for things or treating me like a sugar baby. I'd just like him to pay his share of joint expenses and dates. But I don't want to start this conversation and have him believe I'm just with him for his money. He's brought up his concerns about money and how he never discloses how much he makes, etc., because he doesn't want women to be after his money. And he doesn't like to spend it because he has a weird OCD about seeing his bank account go up and only up. But this is coming at the expense of mine going down. So, yeah, I don't know what to do. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Why are you worried about seeming greedy to a homeless person who relies on others for food and shelter? This person not only eats extra food at your place, but also takes it home. He's not being economical, he's taking advantage of you. Comment 2. You are merely a source of financial support to him. It seems like he doesn't genuinely care about you and is only interested in benefiting financially from the relationship. Now for the update. Thanks for sticking around for this update. So, the trip happened and it was a disaster. I should have seen it coming, but I guess I was too hopeful. He didn't pay a dime and I ended up covering everything. It was like he forgot his wallet existed, but that's not even the worst part. The day we got back, he sat me down and said he was leaving for a job opportunity overseas. No discussion and no asking how I felt about it. Just a decision that he made without me. It felt like a slap in the face. I was stunned and all I could think about was how much I'd invested in this relationship. Not just emotionally, but financially too. And there he was, ready to pack up and leave like none of it mattered. I didn't even get a chance to process it because right after he dropped that bomb, he told me he expected me to keep his apartment and car in check while he was gone. Like I was some kind of caretaker. I was fuming, but I agreed. I don't even know why. Maybe I thought if I did this for him, he'd see how much I cared and reconsider. But deep down, I knew I was making the wrong choice. It was like I was trying to hold on to something that was already gone. The next few days were a blur. I was going through the motions, trying to keep it together. Then, out of nowhere, his sister called me. She never calls. Turns out he'd done something similar to his last girlfriend. Left her high and dry with a bunch of his expenses. I felt like such a fool. All this time I thought we had something real, but it was just a pattern for him. I was angry, not just at him, but at myself too. I should have seen the signs, I should have listened to that little voice in my head that was screaming that something wasn't right. But I didn't. Instead, I let my resentment towards him cloud my judgment. And then, as if things couldn't get any worse, I found out he'd been lying about the job overseas. There was no job. He was actually moving in with someone else, someone he'd apparently been seeing for months. It was like a punch to the gut. I was the other woman in my own relationship. I confronted him about it, and he didn't even deny it. Just shrugged and said it was none of my business. That's when I realized I didn't even know who he was. I thought about all the times I'd defended him to my friends, all the excuses I'd made for his behavior. I was ashamed. The aftermath was messy. I had to untangle myself from his life, which was harder than I thought it would be. I had keys to his place, his car, and I'd even been picking up his mail. It was like I was erasing myself from his world, piece by piece. But the final straw was when I found out he'd been using my credit card for his takeout orders. He'd taken a picture of it one time when I wasn't looking. That was it for me. I cut off all contact, changed my locks, and reported the fraud. It was a small victory, but it felt good. Now, I'm left picking up the pieces of my life, trying to figure out where I go from here. I know I made the wrong choice by agreeing to look after his stuff, but at the time, it felt like the only thing I could do. I was trying to hold on to something that was never really mine to begin with. Thanks for reading. Aita for insulting my wife's looks at dinner after she mocked my cousin's scars. Wife and I have been together for 3 years. We were set up to date by our parents, so it's mostly a mix between an arranged and a love marriage. Our courtship period was 5 months, and we get along well and love each other. However, my wife can be extremely thoughtless sometimes, and that's one thing I don't like about her. Sometimes she can be rude and obnoxious. I hate how I'm describing her, but it's all true. And she'd be judgmental and sometimes make comments over someone's appearance under the guise of helping them. Oh, the dress would have had a much better silhouette if your waist was leaner. You should get your eyebrows waxed and stuff like that, when we both know that's the person's biggest insecurity. She had confessed to me once that she used to not be the nicest person back then, but that was because of her own insecurities that her parents caused in her, and she projects those onto other people. But she's trying and sometimes slips up. Last week, my youngest cousin, a 23-year-old female, who I'm very close to, had dinner with us. My aunt and uncle were there, as well as my mom and dad. Now, my cousin has a scar on her face from her family dog's attack when she was young. She did get surgery done, but those scars on her cheek are still there. Naturally, any girl would be insecure about a thing like this, and my wife maybe was just being insensitive or something and said that she can suggest my cousin the best brand of high-coverage foundation that'll complement her skin texture very well, alluding to her scars. My cousin stammered a little and said she doesn't need it and will find someone who truly loves her regardless of her scars. Standing up to her, I silently cheered on my cousin and felt that the discussion was over, until my wife said that skincare and makeup does make a difference regardless. I was beyond frustrated at this point. Here my wife was yapping on and making my cousin feel ugly. I just thought she was being unbelievably cruel to her. So I said, "Well, you're no great beauty, honey. But I married you regardless. You needn't be concerned with her love life. If it's making you anxious, knock it off." This seemed to shut her up, and she didn't speak for the rest of the dinner. When everyone was gone, my wife yelled, "What the hell was that? And why did I make her feel so ugly and unattractive?" I told her she deserved what was coming, and there's a limit to dealing with her insecurity, and the line gets drawn when she makes someone else feel insecure. How does it feel to have your own energy returned? This seemed to set her off, and she started crying, unable to believe if that's what I think of her. I'm attracted to her, and to me she's enough, but I also have a habit of trying to humble people and showing them their place, which is probably where problem is in me. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Oh yeah, man, you really humbled her by implying both of them were ugly. The second I got to the part where you say your bad trait is humbling people, all I read was, "I'm arrogant. You think way too much of yourself when both you and your wife suck." There were a million ways you could have nipped her commentary. Why were you silent while your cousin defended herself instead of silently cheering her on? And you chose the nuclear option instead. Comment 2. You kind of insulted your cousin even more than your wife did by saying that your wife is no great beauty either, implying that your cousin is ugly. And why insult your wife? She was clumsy, but she didn't say that your cousin isn't beautiful. You could have supported your cousin by saying she looks great either way and changed the subject. Now, for the update. Thanks for sticking around. A lot has happened since my last post. So, after that dinner disaster, things were tense at home. My wife was quiet, which was unusual for her. I thought maybe she was reflecting on her behavior, but boy, was I wrong. Turns out, she was plotting. She started being extra nice to my cousin, inviting her over, giving her gifts, and I thought, well, maybe she's trying to make amends. But no, she was buttering her up for information. My cousin, bless her, is a bit naive and started confiding in my wife. She told her about a small inheritance she'd received, something none of us knew about. My wife, seeing an opportunity, convinced her to invest in a business venture. I didn't know any of this until my cousin came over, all excited about this new partnership. I was suspicious, but my wife assured me it was all legit. Then, my best friend, who's been like a brother to me, came to visit. He's always had a thing for my wife, which I've always laughed off because he's never acted on it. But this time, he was different, distant. He pulled me aside and told me he'd seen my wife with another guy, looking cozy. I didn't believe him. I thought he was just trying to cause trouble because he was jealous or something. But then, things started to click. My wife's late nights, her whispers on the phone, and her sudden interest in my cousin's finances. I confronted her and she laughed it off, saying my friend was lying and that I was being paranoid. I wanted to believe her, but doubt had already planted its seeds. The next day, my cousin called, crying. The business venture was a scam. She'd lost everything. I was furious. I went to confront my wife, but she was gone. She'd taken her things, some of my valuables, and cleared out our joint account. I was in shock. How could I not have seen this coming? I went to my friend, the one who'd warned me, and he was gone too. His place was empty, His phone disconnected. It hit me then. They'd been in on it together. The betrayal stung like a slap in the face. I felt like a fool, played by the two people I trusted the most. I reported everything to the police, but there wasn't much they could do. My wife and my friend had covered their tracks well. My cousin was devastated, and I felt responsible. I should have protected her, but instead, I'd let the wolf into the sheep pen. Now I'm left picking up the pieces. My parents are helping my cousin deal with the financial mess, and I'm trying to rebuild my life without the woman I thought I knew. I can't help but feel like I deserved some of this for the way I treated my wife at that dinner, for trying to humble her. Maybe this was my comeuppance, but life goes on. I'm focusing on my work and supporting my cousin. I'm learning to be more cautious, to not take people at face value. It's a hard lesson, but one I won't forget. I'm just trying to move forward, one day at a time. Thanks for reading. If you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.